right, yeah. 7 minutes. That's close enough. I may as well go ahead and start it. May as well go ahead and get it rolling. Get things up and kicking. I got a fresh cup of coffee here. So, hello. This is a new thing. I'm going to be sketching here, and I have like actual things that I want to do. Basically, what I want to talk about is arms, and the basic concept that the arms are connected through the breastbone. So that's the thing I'm mostly focused on here, is just a whole idea, and I'm gonna sort of do a minimal neck here, which is just, there's the side of the neck, the back of the neck, the trapezius muscle, and then over here we have the clavicle. Now you can just duplicate that on the other side, and you can get away with this in a lot of art. And you can just like draw your cute little anime girl's head or what have you, whatever it is you're trying to draw. But that's a good starting point. Good male-female difference. The male trapezius tends to sit higher up. Female sits lower down. Obviously, the female has a thinner neck. And the clavicles tend to be more pronounced on women. Men tend to have just kind of barely noticeable clavicles because there's muscle caked over top of them, and that makes the tendons in their neck stand out more prominently. But yeah, we don't really care about that right now. All we actually care about is we're working on these arm poses. Now we're gonna kill that. Let's go back to a brush. Now we can swoop the arm out. One of the things that we can do relatively easily is we can recognize that the clavicle comes out, and here it connects to the shoulder blade. Shoulder blade is back here. We can't actually see it, but that's where it is, right in there. Because it'll be in the back. So the collarbone swoops over and connects to it. You look at it from above, okay, you got kind of this S shape, and then it swoops over like that. This is kind of the shape that you get on both sides of the rib cage. And the spine is in the back here. And you got the skull sitting on top of that, right there. And then the throat obviously runs down through the center of the rib cage. So, because you've got this kind of swooping formation right here, when you look down from above, you look at it from the front, you have the same basic swooping formation. And in here, you have the ball of the arm. And over here, you have the upper arm itself. And then down at the end of the upper arm, you have two sort of knuckly things that are called the epicondyles. These are dramatically different between women and men. Women have more pointed elbows. You look at a woman's elbow from behind, and it tends to be kind of this sort of shape here, leading up to the elbow. Okay. And that's the sort of thing you're looking at on a woman's elbow, is sort of this little vaguely pointy shape. But with a man, you're not looking at that. You look at a man's arm from the back, and you have this very squared off kind of blocky thing right here. And there's a lot of speculation in evolutionary biology about why this is. My personal analysis as a parent who has looked at the way that women hold babies and the way that men hold babies, and the difference is that having this little pointy elbow like this gives a baby's head a better cushion, because this right here, it's uncomfortable for the baby. It rests here, and there's kind of this pointy knobby bit right here, and you don't really run into that as much on a woman's arm. I can't say for sure You know, I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I don't understand how all of this shit works. But yeah, that's my analysis pretty much. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe that out. In fact, let's go ahead and wipe that out. Let's move some of this stuff over to other locations. And I click over here and we'll go, okay, here's sort of here's the way that the arms fit together, and those are knitted together onto the spine by the rhombus. Oh, that's another thing. We were talking about the shoulder blade, and we were talking about the spine in the middle of the shoulder blade, and that swoops up over. And I was like, this muscle is a thing, and this muscle is a thing, and I'm not sure. One of them is a teres major, one of them is a teres minor. No. This is the supraspinatus. This is the infraspinatus. Over the spine, under the spine. The teres major and teres minor, they still come out like that, okay? The teres major and teres minor still come out of the of this same area, but they come out here, and the top one comes under the arm here to connect on the other side. So that's on the other side there, and that's the teres minor. Again, that one's on the top. The supraspinatus here connects over there, and the infraspinatus there connects over here, and then you've got the rhomboids. You've got the minor rhomboid and the major rhomboid. But the teres major comes out over here, and they kind of cross around. If you look at the bone, the teres minor comes out and connects here, and the teres major comes over and connects here. And these, because of the way that they're connected, these are what allow you to kind of twist your arm. And you just kind of twist your arm back and forth like this in place. Those are the muscles that do that. And all of your muscles have a purpose. Every single muscle can do one and only one thing. It can pull. All right, so muscles always come in pairs, just like this. You've got your teres minor and your teres major. Every time the teres minor pulls to kind of turn your arm inward like this, the teres major has to relax. And that's the way every pair of muscles always works. One of them contracts, the other one relaxes, and that dictates the direction of the pull. And if you reverse that, if you relax the minor and you tense the major, that pulls the arm the other direction. Now, if you tense them both, then your arm doesn't do anything, because you got one that's pulling this way and one that's pulling that way. And you relax them both, you get the same thing. Okay, and that's always how your various muscles work. It's the same thing with your bicep up front and your tricep on the back. You flex your arm this way, you get a bicep, and you flex it that way, that's the tricep. Muscles never push. They always pull. And they always pull in a specific way. They have what's called the origin point, which is where they come from. And then they lead over to what's called the insertion point. And they go from the origin point to the insertion point. The only thing a muscle can ever do is pull. And when it pulls the insertion point toward the origin point. That's the only thing a muscle can do. Just like people talk about body sculpting. All you can do with the muscle is make it bigger. You can make this muscle bigger and not this muscle, but that imbalance is not going to work well. You've always got these opposing pairs of muscles. You've got one that pulls one direction and one that pulls the other direction. And they fight each other for which one is going to win. That creates the actual motion of whatever it is that you're moving. They pull and work against one another. If you make one of those muscles big and leave the other one small, then you'll be able to yank your arm in one direction. Like if you got your teres minor really, really heavily built up, like you might do if you're constantly arm wrestling, because that's just that muscle. Just that one muscle over and over again. If you work that up a whole lot, then your arm would naturally, when you just left it hang, it would naturally turn in. Okay? It would just automatically what we call pronate. And that would just happen. So you'd be walking around with the backs of your hands forward all the time because your arm would always be twisting over. Of course, it would probably be your right arm because that's what most people arm wrestle with, is their right arm. So that'd just be constantly turning over. And if you look at professional arm wrestlers, you'll see a lot of the time their left hand is hanging by their side and their right hand is in front of their leg, because that's what that muscle does. They never do this. That's not a thing they do. They're always fighting going the other direction. And because they're always fighting and going the other direction, they build up the teres minor, and they never build up the teres major. So they get that lack of development in there. So anyway, let me erase a bunch of this crap that I just kind of threw all over the place. And I'm actually supposed to be sketching, but I'm really nervous because I'm sketching in front of people. I'm not actually sketching in front of people. Nobody's here. Nobody's actually paying attention. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody has showed up. So, but that is the nature of things. When you first start out doing anything, you have a lack of people that actually show up live, and that's fine. I don't mind. But here, let's do a kind of hands on hips pose. And that would be the thumb up around here. Here would be the fingers. I'm not looking to go too detailed on this. But yeah, we'll let's put, and since this is, and we want the right shape on this. So there's, and what I'm trying to think about here is, here's our clavicle, here's our upper arm, and here's our lower arm. And I've really done a bad job on the shape of the arm here because it's me and I do a bad job on everything. Okay, there we go. So we got that kicking there. Now I would like to pull that because that needs to be smoother. This is something that I'm bad at, which I'm trying to improve here. Let me reduce my opacity here and switch to the composition. No. Here we've got kind of the neck and the collarbone. What is this supposed to look like? What if I just kind of sort of there, and here's the curve, and it widens out a little bit there. What if I work with this kind of barreling technique? Sort of make sure. That's better, I think. And then the rest would naturally swing from under here, and this, where that would come from. Now, the clavicle really doesn't move much here. But let's lower this. Let's lower this arm somewhat. And no, that's not how. That would. I come over here, then we'd have sort of we'd have a leg coming down here. That leg would swoop across there. There's the ever elusive thigh gap that so many women are trying to get. Incidentally, if you are a woman who's trying to get that thigh gap and you're killing yourself over it, it's your bone structure. If your bones aren't structured properly, you can't get that. It's not going to happen. It's literally a skeletal feature. Let's take a look and let's go back to our go back to this, and we'll do our kind of blocking out just to kind of see, have I done this reasonably well? Because this is turned. I have not done this very well. She's kind of turned to the side, and I haven't really established that very well. It kind of looks, all of this is off. It's too narrow. So what I really want is I want her to be kind of turned to the side like so, which means that the breasts are going to they're going to sit in more of this kind of shape, and this one over here is going to sit kind of like that, and that's terrible. And then we've got a second bit here. Now we've got this. Got a bit of fluff on the screen there. Oops. This is distorted. This needs to be thicker. Right in there. What we need is we need the kind of diamond shape here. This is about where the delts end up. The woman, so they're softer, slimmer. Those come down, and then the arm comes over. Actually, this, in order for that to work, there's another thing to remember here. In order for your hand to sit in a particular place, it has to be a certain distance from the elbow, and the elbow has to be a certain distance from the shoulder. Okay? Always. It doesn't matter what you do. You can't move your elbow closer to your shoulder. You can't. There's a bone here. It's like one end of the bone is your shoulder, the other end of the bone is your elbow. You cannot shorten that. You can't move that so that your elbow's closer to your shoulder. You just can't. Which means the length of your upper arm here basically forms the radius of a circle. No matter where you put it, no matter where you raise it or whatnot, it's always the same distance. So you can use a perspective ellipse, or more correct, an oblate spheroid, to determine where exactly it needs to go. Now, I've done a shit job on this bit here, but I'm not going to throw it out. I am instead going to I'm going to whack save, and I think that's save as. There we go. So we're going to go shoulder crap 1. We're going to save that in Clip Studio format. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete everything there. And I'm going to come back to the composition window. I'm going to delete everything here. Now, jumping back into my sketch window, we have the initial layout. You recall using these anime titty units, I guess. One anime titty, two anime titty. Yeah, that's a good unit. We can. This is a terrible idea. So we got two anime titties up here, and we got two anime titties down here. God, if I didn't know better, I'd think I was drunk. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at here is I want her turned to the side a bit, and in order to have her turned to the side a bit, we need to do this in perspective. And we'll kind of perspective warp that over there, and we'll perspective warp over here. And up here on the top, right about halfway across, we're going to come up. And we need to come up more than one head. We need to kind of fit her head in there, right about that area. And this will be the neck right here. That'll be the neck right there. Here's the pit of the neck. And then we got our clavicles, which are kind of foreshortened here. And then here is where the arm begins. We're going to begin from there. We're going to come over into our composition area. And her arm has to come back. And again, always has to be the same distance. And the arm comes to the bottom of the rib cage. And the bottom of the rib cage is down here, about 2/3 of the way down. So right about here, extend that outward to here. So if we come down one full anime titty unit, I'm going to get in trouble for this. I know it already. If you come down from there, you start from that area and you trace a perspective ellipse outward. That'll tell you where the end of that arm is. Now I can pull that out a little bit and go back into our composition area. So here is about where that arm needs to go. And then we want the hand to sit on the waist, which is a little bit, and back under our sketch layer, a little bit below there. It's not quite down here. So about here is where we want that to sit. And we need to think about where the arm is going to be. The arm is going to sit right about here. Here is going to be the here's going to be the forward section of the arm. It's going to come in right there, and we're going to have, okay, we get the side over here. We get the side, and that's going to come down under the arm. And she's kind of twisted, and she's kind of off center. God, this is a train wreck. But it's that's the way things go. Is that the right size for the hand? That hand seems small. That hand seems awfully small. So let's expand it outward a little bit. More of a wrist, more of a back of the hand, more of a palm. And then that's the upper part of the arm right there, upper part of the forearm, and that's gonna sweep into the main part of the arm. The arm needs to come down like so. There's the back. Now this is not going as well as I'd like. That comes across there. But the main thing is Thinking about how the clavicle connects into that. This is not making me happy. Let me work from a more. Let me work from more of a front on. So I think I'm biting off more than I can chew on this. Let me go ahead and shoulder crap too. Okay. Hell, I'm shoulder crap two. Click. Okay, there we go. All right, so we saved that. Let's kill that sketch, and let's stick with just that basic minimal shoulder that we started with. There's the clavicle. Now, if we want to reach upward, then the clavicle has to lever up. So let's go with, here's the neck, here's the bulge of that arm, here's the clavicle reaching upward, the other clavicle reaching outward over here, and this clavicle is going to come up. Along with that, the shoulder blade is going to come up. The shoulder muscle is going to come up. The trapezius muscle is going to pull inward here. And that arm is going to come up here. So let's take that and we'll kind of crunch it down. And up here, we've kind of got this reaching sort of thing going on. And here would be sort of the head on that. Yeah, that would be an interesting kind of pose there. And then off to the side, you could have just like one hand, like holding a beer or something. Is it? That's what you would do. You go, oh, yeah, and hold your beer. Because that's a thing people do. That's totally a thing people do. This is one of the things that I run into a lot, and I'm sure that other people run into it a lot too, which is that when you're doing the sketch, there's a thing that you're trying to accomplish, and you get distracted. You get pulled away by all kinds of like other shit, you know? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to make myself a new layer here. And I'm going to take that layer and I'm going to go, yeah, layer color is going to be, we're going to pull it up here into that red area. There we go. And we're going to do that. Oh, let me pull down. No, let's not pull down the opacity just yet. So once again, here, we're going to like kind of rough in sort of a skull, and there's a neck. And then here we have kind of the clavicle. There's the back of the spine, and there's the shoulder blade right there, and that loops around and connects. And from this, we might say, okay, we want the guy to reach forward. If he's going to reach forward, then his shoulder blade is going to push forward, which means his clavicle is going to push forward, and it's going to foreshorten. And when it foreshortens, the ball of that arm is going to move forward, and then the arm is going to move forward, and that's going to round his back. So when you see it from above, this side is right where it typically is, but because he's reaching forward, this clavicle is going to move forward. That back is going to round, and you're going to get a more pronounced kind of crease right there as he reaches forward. And here's his hand coming forward, and here's his other hand holding a beer. Because you gotta have your beer. As I sit here and drink coffee, not beer. Now, if he were to reach forward and up, then this would also move upward. So it would also shorten in this direction. So he would be reaching forward and up, and that would pull this inward, and it would foreshorten as it moved upward. And you'd get kind of that. Got to interlace everything here. And then this would be like his hand as he's going, why, you fucker, whatever. God damn you. Whatever he's doing. Whatever he's saying, I have no idea what I'm doing. I feel like an absolute dork over here. But what can you do? You know, I mean, it's just like... The entire point of this is to get... to get a number of sketches out, and here's you could reach down too, so you could stretch downward and you could reach down, and the arms tend to want to move in opposite directions. So if you're reaching down with this arm, then this arm is going to want to come up. So as this arm reaches up, it's not necessarily going to stretch upward and need to pull the clavicle along with it, but it is going to kind of come upward, and your hand is going to kind of sit off to the side here. I remembered to click record this time, so when this is done, I'll actually have a high quality recording to put up instead of just leaving the live stream. This would be like a guy, I don't know, like crawling out of a sewer or something. Who flushed me down the toilet? That was not cool. I'm going to find whoever did this to me. I'm going to stick a plunger in his ear. Oh. If the shoulder is coming up, then the rhythm of the arm, it's unlikely that you're going to have kind of this this downward slope here. It's unnatural to have this kind of pushing and pulling thing going on. That's kind of an unnatural state of affairs right there, and there would be your rib cage right in here, and the elbow comes right to the end of the rib cage or thereabouts. Then here would be your head. You'd be kind of cranking your shoulder up into your head, so you would probably tilt your head to the side as you did that. That's not something people don't typically just like lift their shoulder and do nothing. They kind of move in a contrary fashion. They move their head to the side. That's one of the things that you find as people are exercising, is that God damn it, we've got fruit flies in here. I think we've had the bananas too long. But one of the things that you find when people are exercising is that they're supposed to be working their biceps, so they try to curl something upward. But they'll also, as they curl it upward, they'll kind of lean into it, and that's what preacher curls are for, just to kind of force your elbow to stay right where it is. So in order to get the weight all the way up, you know, even if you lean forward, you know, you're not bringing it up to your face, you're bringing it up to your shoulder. And you get these people that lean in all the time, and they use that to kind of get the weight where it needs to be. And you really need to you need to watch that when you're working out, because that prevents you from getting the results that you're looking for. But when people are going about their daily business, it's like if somebody's just like standing around, okay, chances are that their hips and their shoulders are tilted in opposite directions. For example, they'd have their hips kind of shot off to the side like that, and they'd be standing on this one foot, and then their other foot would be kind of relaxed and just kind of sitting there. And so their other foot would just be kind of there, and their other arm would just be kind of hanging loose there. And they'd have sort of this kind of thing. But then on top of that, their head would likely be tilted in the opposite direction to that, because they want their head to stay more or less level. Okay, so you get this kind of tilt one way, tilt the other way, tilt back, okay, to try and keep the head level. And obviously the feet are on the ground plane, they have to stay level. So you get this kind of tilted this way, straightened up. And that kind of rhythm happens over and over again in all kinds of poses and all kinds of people standing in different ways. I don't even know if any of this makes sense. I'm just kind of like going with it. Mostly, as I said, I was talking to some of the guys on the Discord earlier this week, and I was saying, mostly this is not because I expect you to get anything out of it. I'm just making myself sketch once a week. That's all I'm doing over here. Yeah, let's pull that down, and let's again make ourselves a new layer, and we'll turn that one off. Can I drag that? No, I can't. Layer color. Okay. And okay, so there's the manubrium, and there's the clavicle. The clavicle can move about not that far. It can move about that high up. So that can kind of form an arc there. That's about the most it can do. It can't move that much below the rib cage right there. In fact, it can't really move below the rib cage at all. It's almost stuck there. It can move down a little bit, but because of the way the ribs are there, it can't go down there. So you've got that set up right there. That comes out, and you've got this sort of arc here. And on the other side, you have pretty much the exact same thing where it comes out, and you've got, again, this little arch that it can follow, which means right here in the middle, which is about a third of the whole thing, you got your head sitting here in the middle, and your shoulders can come up about to the side of your head, and they can go down a little bit farther if you kind of stretch. You can pull your shoulder down, just not all that much, and that gives you sort of a weak line. You can pull it down. If you look, there's this line that comes across, and when you push it down as much as you can without moving. It doesn't move that much. It moves maybe 2 inches up and maybe 1 inch down. That's about all it does, is move just that little amount. So then from the end of that, you've got your upper arm, which is going to come down to about here. And when you lift, it's going to bring it up here, and that's going to bring your arm up to about here. So if you kind of if you shrug your shoulder up as much as you can, it comes up, about, it comes up almost to here, almost to that one anime titty mark. Not quite. Does it come up any farther than that? No, it actually doesn't. It comes up to comes up to about 1/3 of the way down instead of 2/3 of the way down. So you've got sort of your range of motion on that shoulder. Here's your one anime titty. And over here, you've got your rib cage. And your rib cage is coming down about 2/3 of an anime titty. And then coming back up about 1/3 of an anime titty. And when it gets back up here, this is about as high as you can bring your shoulder, about as high as you can bring your elbow by raising your shoulder. It typically sits down around here. So that comes kind of up and over. Here's the manubrium right here, and here's the collarbone. And the collarbone could be pushed down too, but not very much. So it's kind of your range of motion is sort of in here, and it's maybe 3 inches and 1 inch, so like 4 inches total, something like that. Yeah, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot at all. So that's really the important thing to keep in mind, is like how much that clavicle moves. I mean, that's really what we're working on here, is trying to get the idea of how the collarbone moves and how that fits together with the rest of the arm, because all of this is yoked together pretty much. And then you've got like your hand over here, and so if you're holding out your hand to point at something over here, then you've got your other arm over here. But that's all sort of connected in through this, and it's all kind of one piece. It's not even two pieces that are connected in the middle. It's kind of all one piece that all centers around this fulcrum in the center. Because that fulcrum, that's really no different than like your knee and your kneecap, you know? And yeah, I think that's a productive thing to think about. It's new layer time. Hello, layer color. Take that up to red. Go down here, turn that off. Okay, so if we jump in here and we just go, okay, go to the right layer first of all. You've got your clavicle, and you've got your arm coming down here. Here's the rib cage. The rib cage is fitting together about like this, and of course we've got one anime titty, two anime titty, three anime titty, and three anime titty is the bottom of the crotch. And there's our waist right there. That fits in there. And here's the legs. I'm not good at drawing legs. Please don't make fun of me for drawing shitty legs. I'm also not good at placing the figure on the ground plane. That is my least favorite thing about drawing anything, is putting things on the ground plane. But then the arms come down, and then you can bring the arms up, and you can cross them over, and you can go, hey, yeah, there's a big strong guy with his arms folded because he's a badass. As you know, badass is like my brand. General badassery. One of these days I will go back and rewrite the Badass Manifesto. But right now, it's just, yeah, so everything is just kind of fitted together in there. It's all... And then here's the very complex area of the hands. Same thing here, but that would fit up underneath. Typically, people will, when they fold their arms, they'll put one hand underneath. They'll put one hand up on top, like this, and the other one underneath. And they just go, yeah, there we go, right there. We'll do one underneath, but also, as I was just doing that, I noticed that when I folded my arms, I stuck the fingers up. I put one hand up, but the other hand also comes up. So yeah, it still is kind of that, yeah, I'm going to hang out like that. So it does come up from underneath like that, and there's kind of the shape of the arm there, and that doesn't really impact the clavicle much. But it does impact it. There's kind of a rough approximation. God, this looks like shit. I'm terribly self-conscious about my drawing. I always have been. Never looks like I want it to look. Never comes out like I want it to come out. That'll change over time, in a few months. And all of you have gone, this guy sucks, and moved on. And who the hell wants to watch a guy get good? You want to watch the guy who's already good. And there, yeah, that's the kind of thing there. And if you proceed to with the other arm, if you again taking up too much space on these layers, and then I gotta do something new. I'm really trying mightily not to just draw over top of things and to create new layers, because that's a problem that I have a lot, is to just like sketch over top and sketch over top and sketch over top. So I'm trying to kind of kick in a new layer and kick in a new layer and kick in a new layer, so I can make sure that, you know, as I'm moving through this, as I go, no, I need to do something else. Instead of just drawing right over top of it, I want to create a new layer and work on that. I was trying to do new files, but that's a pain in the butt. So I'm just going to do new layers, and I'm going to have all of these terrible layers where I've got sketch, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. But it's going to be there, you know. This is gonna be a thing. So if you've got kind of, there's this guy standing here, and here's his arm, and he's got a hand on his hip over here, and then the other clavicle, he's kind of pushing outward because he's going to point over in this direction at somebody, and he's going to go, hey, you, don't put that in your butt. That's a bad idea. You should get something that's intended to be put in your butt instead of that thing, because that does not belong in your butt. The backstories I come up with for my sketches are just like vaguely horrifying. The level of my work, incidentally, tends to come out fairly sophisticated gesture drawing. It's I had an instructor tell me that once, and it just always stuck in my head, because that's still the level I'm at, is fairly sophisticated gesture drawing. And yeah, that's the kind of thing. And you can see here that the clavicle's kind of angled up, and then the clavicle's kind of angled down. And then over here, you got the back is kind of visible, and the front is kind of visible. You'd have a plane here, and another plane here. So depending on where the light was coming from, if the light was coming from this direction, then this part would be lit, and this part here would be in shadow. Now, and that would twist around there. So you kind of get this, shading thing going on. Always think about where the light is coming from in your pictures and where stuff is. Also, it's generally a bad idea to have the light come from that side, because you want the light to hit your character's face. So if we have the light hitting the character's face, then we have a shadow from the arm. The light is going to hit the arm, and it's going to shadow in here. But we're also going to shadow over here. So this side of his body would be shaded. The front here would be shaded. All of this, and you'd probably get like a little reflected light and some definition. But mostly everything over here would be in shadow, and then you'd get kind of a better look at the character's face. And you want to always think about where the light is coming from in all of your work, because there's never enough stuff to think of. You know, you never have enough things to think about. You got to think about all the shit all the time, no matter what the fuck you're doing. And when you forget it, that's why your drawings suck, is because you forgot something. Oh yeah, I forgot that bit. I forgot about that part. So if you just drew kind of a yatta kind of gesture where somebody was like throwing their arms up in the air, waving them like they just don't care. And that would fit together roughly like that. My anime chitty game is worse than I thought, and I'm kind of trying to avoid it, which is why I'm drawing more male reading characters. Like, wow, I really suck at drawing anime titties. I should stop doing that. Again, shorthand, point the knee downward if it's the front. More shorthand. For a masculine character, put the bulge high up on the calf. For a feminine character, put it lower down and smooth it out. But for a guy, make it big and up high. Yeah, that's an arm pose of some kind. This would be kind of make a muscle kind of pose here, and have a guy looking over at his own arm, and then on the other side, he'd probably have his arm hanging down, not doing much of anything. You'd get a little bit more of a clavicle raise there because he's trying to emphasize that flex in the bicep. He's moving it up. Still an anime titty. True anime titty. Those proportions, about 2/3 of an anime titty. 1/3, 2/3. Okay, yeah. Checking my proportions. You start thinking this is not long enough. That should come out here, and that should come up here, and then that should go there. So let's pull that. Pull that bit. That's not right. Let's pull this just to make it. Okay, so that needed to be fixed, and that means this over here also needs to be fixed, because again, that needs to match. Okay, that looks better. That fits together better, and yeah, that's something. What about this? Let's trace our perspective ellipse. When we trace that perspective ellipse, indeed that is about the right length, and then that needs to be a little longer. But if you think of the joint as the center of a circle, and you can think of the member, the upper arm, the lower arm, the hand, even the clavicle, as a radius of the circle, and that will give you a pretty good idea of whether you've got that perspective right. So right here we've got this center. Down around here is where the end of the rib cage is, and we can trace that perspective ellipse right there, show that that's where the arm needs to be. You just trace that upward. This is actually kind of short. Let's expand that outward a little bit. If we expand that outward a little bit, then that comes down here, and then your And the lower arms need to come down about here, about midway down the thigh. So if we were to put his arm down, it would be about like this. There would be his elbow. And there would be the hand. And the same basic thing, if we were to bend his arm here, we could trace that around, and we could say if he bent his hand, then, you know, here would be kind of the fist. And it has to be there. If he bends his arm inward that way, it has to go there. If he then rotates his arm outward, okay, that hand has to come out here. If you know where the hand is and you know where the shoulder is, then the elbow has to be midway between them. It has to be connected by the right angle in there. And that dictates everything. If you know where your foot is and you know where your hip is, then your knee has to be midway between them, and you have to connect that. Okay? Your knee has to be in here somewhere. And where exactly in there it is, it depends on how long these parts of the leg are supposed to be. But you can just put those in and you can make that happen. Let me go ahead and new layer. Layer, color, okay. It's just like, you can do that with all kinds of stuff. It's just like we were saying with the collarbone here, with the clavicle. Okay, that kind of dictates where the shoulder can be. The shoulder has to be in one of these places, and wherever the shoulder is, okay, if you've stretched that shoulder upward, okay, from here, if you know how long that arm is, which it would be like maybe around that long, okay, you now know if it's here, then you know it has to be in a circle around that area. And I'm just kind of freehanding it, so it's possible that it's not exactly a circle. But you get that kind of width, you get that kind of length right, and once you have that, then you know that in order for your hand to be like anywhere, you've got to be able to put the lower arm there, and the lower arm, once you put it there, you can again do your perspective ellipse and figure out where it has to be, and that dictates where your hand is every single time. You know, there's no other way to go about that. If you know where the shoulder is and you know where the elbow is, then you pretty much know where the hand is. The hand has to go somewhere on that perspective ellipse. The elbow has to go somewhere on this perspective ellipse. And there are limits to how far your arm can twist and bend in different directions. It's like if you try and move your elbow past the middle of your chest, most people can't do that. Even if you can do it, you can't move it very far, and it's tortured and awkward. It just doesn't move past there. Typically, it doesn't move much past the inside of the shoulder. It'll move about halfway in without much effort, but to move it much farther, you really got to try, and you frequently end up twisting to kind of fake it. And it doesn't end up moving past the center line of your chest. You just twist the center line of your chest so you can move it past the center line of your face. And that's how a lot of people will kind of cheat with that range of motion. And these kind of things are how the body fits together and moves in lots of different ways to get things where they're supposed to be. Ah, jeez. It's frequently hard for me to articulate these kinds of things. I'm over here thinking at the moment that there's probably a direct relationship between the clavicle and the size of the arm, and there is, because it's 1 2/3. That's what it ends up being. Well, very nearly 1 2/3, roughly 1 2/3. I am so annoyed at this whole proportions thing, because I thought I had come across something that was really, really important with the proportions of legs and arms in relationship to the trunk. But the more I look at photographs, the more I think that it's kind of erased by individual differences. So you have a difference that matters when it comes to ideal proportions, but when you start talking about like actual individual people, you end up erasing all of that, and you can't really tell. It's like you'll see people, and these people will read like, oh, well, that person looks older than they are. You'll see like a 15-year-old who looks older, or you'll see a 23-year-old who looks younger, and it's because of the length of arms and legs. But while we do kind of read a certain proportion as being older or younger, it's like if I do my anime titty diagram over here, while we do kind of read a particular proportion as older or younger, it's like, here's your knee right here, okay? So if you got your knee right here, and you got your shoulder up here, and you come down here, and then you come down here, and then you have your hand right here, where the wrist falls differs based on how old you are, okay? And if your wrist falls right here, then you're very, very young. And if your wrist falls right here, then you're an adult. So it's just right in this area, but this area is about 6 inches. And if your arms are just an inch longer or shorter, then it's not going to read the same way. It's the same thing with your legs. If your legs are a little bit longer or shorter, it's not going to read the same way. And I thought I was really onto something with that, but it turns out I'm not. It's just a question of, if your wrists are up here next to your waist, then that means you're very, very young. And you kind of have this at the waist, you have about a quarter of the way past the waist, a third of the way past the waist, and a halfway past the waist. And you put that sort of thing together, and you have these distances that cause us to read somebody as being very young, teenager, and adult. So you kind of have child, tween, teen, adult are the 4 kinds of ages. And if you're drawing your arms a little bit short, it makes your characters look younger, a lot younger. And if you're posting not safe for work shit on Reddit, you can find your work deleted. You can find yourself banned from subreddits. You can find yourself in all kinds of trouble because it's just a matter of if the arm is just a little bit too short. If it's just a little bit too short, then it starts to read wrong, and they go, that looks like a child, and then you get in trouble because you drew something and you didn't have your arms long enough. So, in other words, just draw all of your characters with freakishly long arms, and that way nobody will say they look like children. They'll say they look like spiders. And then Tucker Carlson will get mad at you and say they're trying to make spiders even sexier. That wasn't Tucker Carlson. That was, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. He was the other guy. He was the old guy and said that shit. The fuck was that even about? It's weird. Fox News is weird. It's not because they're conservative. They're nuts. And I don't want to get political on here anyway. Because it's not political. It's just they're just playing to their audience. The left does it too. Is the Sam Cedar, Steven Crowder thing is just driving me nuts, because fundamentally it's like Steven Crowder told Ethan Klein from H3H3 they wanted to have a debate, and Ethan was like, okay, and then he invited Sam Cedar to come and debate instead of Ethan. And Ethan is like, I'm not good enough to debate Steven Crowder. I'm going to invite somebody who is. And he invited Sam, and Steven threw a fit, and they're sitting there and they're laughing and going, ha ha, Steven doesn't want to debate Sam. And I'm just like, you can't just bring in a ringer. You know, you can't bring in a ringer for the fight. If you agree that like you're going to have a boxing match, and then you bring in a different fighter and go, oh, you're going to fight this guy instead, that's not what the other guy agreed to. It's not fair. Okay, and you can say all this shit you want. You can say, Steven just wanted to debate Ethan because Ethan's a moron. Well, yeah, and Ethan being a moron is why he invited Sam. And Sam's not necessarily a moron, but it's awfully fucking mean-spirited of him to go, ha, I'm going to step in, and now I'm going to make fun of the guy who doesn't want to fight me because I'm not the guy he agreed to fight. I mean, maybe Steven does think that Sam's out of his weight class, but I don't think that's necessarily it, because I see Sam do a lot of shady crap on his channel. And like I said, I don't want to get political on this. It's just you got one guy on the left and one guy on the right, and they're both equally in the wrong from my perspective, because Steven doesn't actually want to debate. He just wants to cause a spectacle for his fans. That's what he does. He's an entertainer. He doesn't have to be especially smart. He doesn't have to be right. He just has to pander to what they believe. And Sam is exactly the fucking same. He doesn't have to be smart. He doesn't have to be right. He just has to pander to his audience and what they believe. And Ethan, it doesn't need to do shit. All he has to do is create a spectacle for his fans. And all three of them are winning out of this. And it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. And I've been drinking too much coffee. I got to go hit the bathroom. I will be right back in a moment. Meanwhile, stare at this shitty sketch that I did. Laugh at it. Alrighty. Let's get back to business. Now, back to business. Business. This is business. This is my business. I'm giving you the business. Live on stream. Okay, so, is it time for a new layer? Might be time for a new layer. I think it's important that in the process of doing these, I'm fixing my own problems right in front of people, because that way people can see that problems can be fixed. Okay, so we got kind of the center line here, and we're going to go animate titties, animate titty, 1/3, 2/3. Let's swoop that over like so. Okay, here's a shoulder blade, manubrium, collarbone, collarbone. There's that yoke. There's the arm. There's the arm. Come down to here. That's where the elbow goes, and this is where the rest of the arm goes. And it should be roughly the same length right there. So we've got the rest of the body there. We got one more anime titty. And that is the bottom of the crotch. Which means, here are your legs right here. And here's your hands. Sitting midway down the thigh. Now, if you want to make this person appear younger, all you got to do is yank those arms up a little, and it doesn't even need to be that far. Yank them up to about there, and now, magically, if I can get this whole thing in here. Now, magically, that looks like a younger character. Just because of where the fingers fall. And actually, I managed to do exactly the same thing. The fuck is wrong with me? This is terrible. This is a terrible example. Why did I even bother? God. I'm awful. I'm a terrible person. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. Collarbone. There's the opening of the rib cage. There's the full rib cage. Sweep it up, it over like so. And shoulder blade, upper arm, lower arm. Now we want to raise this arm up, and we just trace that. Actually, let's do that with the other arm. Grab this, move it over here. And we'll pull that. Okay. Deselect and let's rotate. Okay, so we're gonna trace that perspective ellipse right there. So there's the upper arm pointing, and here is the lower arm. Lower arm should be about the same length as the upper arm. We have the upper arm coming all the way up here. And there's our clavicle, upper arm, lower arm. And the rhythm coming up through this is always going to be upward. So that's how that ends up there. We've got the swoop of the back. We've got the swoop of the underarm. We've got the chest muscle is coming up and over. So we got kind of that thing going on there. Okay. And then that's about Control 0. Where'd that go? And now let's flip that back around. And then you've got kind of that arm kind of swinging out in that direction. And you can just point your guy's face off in that direction. He's going, you bastard. You did this to me. You gave me a shitty concept of proportions and made me not know how the body fits together. It's all your fault. Nothing is ever my fault. It's all your fault. And give the guy anime hair so he can complain about the power of friendship. You're in there. I'm such a dork. I don't know why I even bother with this. But God, I've been on for an hour and 13 minutes. I was only going to do like an hour, but I've been on for an hour and 13. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to do, is just like get on here and just go and maybe have like some kind of, this is just making myself work. That's all it is. If you want to watch, that's cool, and if you're not interested, that's fine too. It doesn't look like anybody is here. There don't appear to be any people in chat. So I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and bail on this because this is pretty much what I wanted to do, is get some work out here. And again, I don't know if any of this is instructive or if any of this is entertaining at all. If it is, great, and if it's not, well, you know, it's here so people can see the kind of shit that you go through to learn this sort of stuff. I'll be back next week to do more sketching on stream that nobody cares about and wants to watch, but yeah, that is what it is. So, okay, bye.